Wednesday. Let's chat. I'm Kanan Chandran, the publisher of StormAsia.com, and this is our regular series of Wednesday Web Chat, where we bring together groups of individuals and in a panel discussion about topics that are current and trending. Today's discussion is one on luxury. What's happening in that space after all these changes that have been taking place in society, from economic issues, standoffs between nations. You've also now got a pandemic sweeping through, making things very uncertain in terms of when we're going to get out of it and be able to return to some sense of normalcy. We've got in our luxury mindset brands that always sort of come up. Rolls Royce, Louis Vuitton, Prada, Rolex. These are all brands we associate with luxury. They represent quality, craftsmanship, but all have cheaper options, of course. But nevertheless, they are all greatly desired. Now, why is that? And will that prevail? Will that mentality and that attitude continue? Up to the pandemic, this was a thriving industry with the top 100 luxury brands, goods companies generating US $281 billion in 2019. Then the pandemic hit, and things are very uncertain now. So even before COVID, there were signs of change taking place, and we've got the millennials and the Gen Z. They seem to have a different appreciation for luxury. They have their own definitions for it. They want sustainability. They're eco-minded. They seem to like to buy second-hand goods for their vintage value. They seem to be less flashy. They prefer to splash their cash on experiences. They're quite comfortable shopping online now, and that's another element that intrudes on the luxury space because it was always sort of a physical experience. And then now with COVID and your inability to travel, that travel accounts for about 40% of luxury purchases. So that's, of course, a severe hit in terms of spending. So, is change in the offing? Is Lux in a state of flux? And today's panelists have different viewpoints to bring to this discussion. We've got Octavio Garcia, who has woken up very early from his Switzerland home to join us. Octavio is the founder of Gorilla Watches, a relatively new and bold watch brand. And prior to Gorilla, he used to be the creative director at Audemars Piguet. Welcome, Octavio. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me, Kana.
We've got also Raj Kaul, who celebrates his birthday today and has decided to blow out some candles with us. Raj is a C-level luxury retail professional who has spent 30 years in the fashion industry in Southeast Asia and Australia. And he's worked with a variety of high-end brands and with companies like F.J. Benjamin in Singapore and British India. And he's got a lot of insight which he's keen to share with us. Welcome, Raj, to this session.
Thank you very much, Kanan. I'm very privileged to be part of this excellent panel, and I really appreciate your time and having me over. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got Daniel Magg, who's General Manager of W.Atelier, a brand that distributes luxury kitchens and works with designer brands such as Fritz Hansen and Cassina. Daniel had spent 20 years in Europe before heading out into Southeast Asia, where he's probably now facing a very different sort of market. Welcome, Daniel, to this session as well.
Hello, thank you for having me.
And making up the panelists group is Dr. Sonja Prokopec. She's the LVMH Chaired Professor of Marketing at the Marketing Department and Associate Academic Director of the Center of Excellence in Luxury, Art and Culture, Asia Pacific at the ESSEC Business School. She's based in Singapore, and she actively advises companies from the luxury, lifestyle, and automotive industries regarding consumer behavior, trends, consumer research, and marketing and brand management issues. Welcome, Sonja.
Thank you
and
so
welcome
much,
all
Kana.
of you to this session. Sonja, based on your study and experiences with luxury brands, what are the main concerns they are facing? What do they voice to you in terms of the challenges that they are facing?
So I think you brought up a lot of the points in your introduction in terms of what's happening in the luxury industry. There are a lot of trends that have started pre-pandemic that have just been significantly accelerated during the pandemic. So you mentioned some of the things like, for example, digitalization, which is, something that, or being able to sell on online, or being able to engage online, which not all companies have adopted at the equal pace. And those who did not adopt that during the pandemic are really the ones who suffered. Then, of course, we have the issue of the fact that there are no tourists. You said before, 40% of all the luxury purchases were made by tourists traveling all over the world. And so what many of the companies are doing is trying to engage with the local consumers in a more significant way than they did before. And I think this trend is here to stay because it's becoming much more about personal experiences and personalization and clienteling on a local market than just on than only catering to tourists. And of course, all the other trends that were there before, like sustainability, like the importance of, being environmentally friendly, which again, not maybe the strongest point for some of the luxury brands, but I think that the general trend that we're seeing is those who have been able to adapt and adopt these trends in an active and aggressive way are the ones that are doing well. And maybe the last point, that I wanted to say before others can jump in is, I would actually say that, luxury industry is not really, I think it's not necessarily suffering. It's a very strong signals that it's going to bounce back. It's bouncing back already, but not all brands will bounce back equally. And that's going to very much depend on how well they can adapt to the new challenges that I've just raised. And there are some more, but yeah, this is, I think, what is to say for now.
Okay, cool. A lot of points there that will be raised later and as we discuss this. Moving to Octavio, I just wanted to find out, would you classify Gorilla watches as a luxury product, or are you working towards building it into a luxury product?
I would not even classify actually Audemars Piguet as a luxury product. Luxury for us is a kind of ambiguous word. It's a word that I think carries a lot of preconceptions and negative connotations. And ultimately, what we're trying to do and what we speak about more than luxury is craftsmanship. It's qualitative services. It's these sorts of things. It's connection with people. It's emotional products. It's an artistic point of view. So no, we are not striving to have this label necessarily on the brand. More so, we're striving to behave and interact with our clients in a qualitative way. And so that's our philosophy. That's the way we look at the future of our field.
Okay, so in terms of luxury, then you leave it up to the others to determine whether they want to call you a luxury product.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Raj, what has been the mood of luxury principles that you've been dealing with over the 30 years? I'm sure many of them started coming into this part of the world.
And I would like to go back to the very basic point that you raised in the introduction, is luxe in a flux. I think the key is, has it ever been in a flux? Will it be in a flux? The fact that luxury is always driven by perception, is always driven by, by the quality of life we want to lead, by the improvements we want to make in the way we see things. As we acquire more, as we are more successful in our lives, we tend to look for better things, better experiences. And luxury is not just about a product. It's also about an experience, as you have aptly pointed out earlier. In dining, in holidaying, in entertaining, in living. There's a whole range of things that we look at about Gorilla watches. I think he's perfectly on the spot with it. We leave it to the consumer to make that decision, to make that choice, whether what they see and what they experience really resonates with their perception of luxury. And it's really very, very relative in terms of how consumers see it. You know, our generation, which is really a bit of a yesterday's generation, compared to the millennials and the generation of now and the future, they see things differently because influences are different, exposures are different. We didn't have social media when we were growing up. But when we look at the generation going forward, they are influenced very heavily by their peers. They see things, they have enormous power of information at their fingertips. When they look at information, they analyze, they compare, they check before they even make a decision, and they see what is really in and what's really out, what's hot, what's cool. It's different. We didn't see those things. We were more driven by the fact that we want to be understated. We want to be very much in that league where, you know, where it's really the most premium of the things, affordability and so on and so forth. But when I look at the generation going forward, I see young people who probably don't even earn as much as they spend on the things they want to possess and acquire. So the point of the matter is that this continuity of luxury going forward will always be, it will be such. It will continue to grow. It will continue to develop. We will always aspire. We will always want to have things. So yes, is it in a flux? The short answer is no, it's not in a flux. Now, going back to the question that you have put to me, how are the principals seeing it? And, you know, I have worked with a whole range of principals, and I continue to be in contact with them, and I see how they see things. They are concerned. They are concerned in the way things are being consumed. The fact of the matter is that product is still being consumed in large manner. People are still buying things, but they're buying things differently. This definition of luxury that we have had historically in our mind, I think some adjustments are coming into play. Principals are looking at those adjustments, and they're doing their best to cater to the needs of the consumer, which is different, very different. Or else, why would they queue in for hours in front of luxury stores in a hot, humid sun and not buy it online? Why would they just wait for months until the product that arrived, that they really, really want to have, arrives? The short answer really is it's so much what they want and the power that they have over these things. And I think increasingly the principals are beginning to recognize there's those fundamental issues about luxury, which is exclusivity, which is about the branding, which is about the quality, which is about the managing the whole experience of how we deliver that experience. These are very important considerations.
You've got a showroom, you are dealing with customers walking in, clients that you have on book. What's the mood been like in the past few years?
You know, if you would have asked me before the pandemic, you would have probably received a completely different answer than you're going to receive from me now. Because right now we're in an ultra privileged position in my industry, is because people are basically locked up in their homes. And, you know, consumption is fed by boredom.
Okay.
And, so we're doing extremely well at this point. And so does the whole furniture industry, so much so that they cannot cope with the orders. I think before that, it would have been different, to me. So, but then for us at the moment, all is good, right? And people are also willing to spend because they cannot spend on flights and hotels and all these kind of things. So for us, it's we're in a good position right now, basically. Okay. Luxury is always a question of what induces the perception of luxury in the consumer, because that's ultimately what counts. Because otherwise our business model will not work. So this is therefore, in my humble understanding, I think luxury is always in a state of flux, because what is perceived as luxury always changes, as has been mentioned by all those influences from environmental concerns, all those things, your age, all kinds of things. So we also see that in our some of our brands who are making huge efforts to rebrand and reinvent themselves using recycled materials for their products, partially at least, and so on and so on. So I think there's always a state of flux. I mean, if you look at what is the definition of luxury in the dictionary, it says a state of great comfort or elegance, especially when involving great expense. So the great expense is probably not, the first point, but a state of great comfort or elegance always lies in the eye of the beholder. And we are tasked in our businesses to induce that state. And that's not only a question of product. That's a question of lifestyle, a question of service, a question of how you meet your clients, and so on and so on. So there's a whole package.
What I wanted to speak about maybe was this new definition of luxury that Octavio and then Raj were talking about, which is, in a way, not really calling it luxury. I think that's definitely something that is becoming very relevant, but I would say for really still the connoisseur segment, which, I think Audemars Piguet would probably fall heavily into that, in a domain that caters heavily to consumers who are, really evolved and have been consuming luxury for quite some time, or evolving rapidly in their experience and their journey with the luxury. I think we are also seeing that most of the growth, for example, now is coming from first-time luxury buyers, and and they are not. They are buying icons. They are buying iconic products. So I think we still see that that definition is evolving and changing, but it is still for a very small percentage of the luxury consumers if we look at where we are today, and that most of the luxury growth is still coming from markets and consumers that are they're relatively new to luxury.
Do you see a lot more of luxury brands consolidating if they start sort of running into issues? Because it's the big brands that they have the deep pockets. They have the ability to also move quickly if they want to by acquiring, right? Acquisitions play a big part, like Richemont and the likes. They are very big on acquiring businesses and growing, becoming huge companies. Will you see more luxury brands being sort of absorbed into larger groupings like this?
You have hit the as they call, the nail on its head by asking this particular question. I have always wondered, even as a luxury professional, what is really going through the industry at this point in time through consolidation. When I try to look at organizations which are buying our competitors just because they can afford it, because what you said, they have deep pockets. Invariably, what they do is they kill the competition. They stifle the competition. They don't let them evolve. By buying them over, everything that these competitors do is engineered. They don't let them come out. And lifestyle of a brand is very cyclical. It's very evolutionary. There are brands that really peak and then they go into the slum, then they come back again. And we have had many examples where we have seen brands that have not been doing well and abruptly they transform, they change, and then they fly. Literally, Gucci is an example right in front of you. It's gone through several such life cycles. And there are so many more that we can cite. The key here is when organizations buy competitors, they also kill that opportunity for these brands to evolve. We also face a very difficult issue at this point in time in the industry, and that's private equity. I mean, private equity has been heavily investing in brands, and these are the folks who are mathematical. And the business of luxury, business of lifestyle has always been an art form. It has not been mathematical. It's not being something that you can really, really look through in terms of modeling and measurements and criteria. It's a matter of looking at things in a sensible way. And the point is when the private equity gets involved and they see that these things are not working very well, they either abandon them or they don't really continue investing in them. And by the time they resell the brand or they move into the next phase, the brand has just lost its complete DNA. It's virtually not worth anything after that. We have so many examples that we see in the industry. And we also notice that a lot of brands historically have been owned by the families. There is a deep heritage in these brands. There is a culture in these brands. They have had generations of success. And, you know, as the new generation comes into play, they don't want to continue. They don't want to develop these. They just want to exit. They want to sell. And they end up selling these heritage brands to organizations. And then there's absolutely, you see, there's just no evolution thereafter. I also feel that there are certain issues regarding brands, you know, in terms of expansion that they have undertaken, especially in the Southeast Asia. You know, there was time when we could see brands, exclusivity was the key of a brand. It was not easily available. You had to really look for it. And there was only one store or 3 stores or 2 stores. But now when you look at these shops with huge facades and large footprint, and you wonder where the exclusivity is gone, it's become so accessible. And, you know, there are so many issues in the business now that we try to grapple with, to try to see how can we balance that exclusivity, that desirability, that brand value, that unique DNA, that evolution versus private equity, versus consolidation, versus companies buying practically everything that they can see that comes into their pathways, whether it makes sense or it doesn't make sense. Brand extensions, they go into categories that don't even make any sense within their brand, but yet they're trying to do it because there is a financial pressure behind it to expand and explore. And well, that's where we are at the moment.
So it seems to be a very uncertain mix of things taking place here.
There is a lot happening.
Does that mean luxury per se is losing its sort of definition? Is it becoming all things for everybody?
Not for all brands, Kanan. There are still certain brands. I think we generally know, all my distinguished panel can quickly, I'm sure, pretty much identify which these brands are. They have pretty much kept to their uniqueness. They have pretty much kept to their heritage, their DNA, and they're very successful. Whereas there are others that have lost their way. They have lost their way. Either they exited the market, or their equity got involved, investors got involved, or somebody bought them over, and they just lost that momentum that they had altogether.
Octavio, when you started something, are these concerns that you have for your brand going down the line?
Being bought by a group?
Being bought by a group,
love to do that.
whether you lose your identity, you know, what you're trying to create with a brand.
No, in fact, first I just wanted to create a tangent from what Sonja was saying regarding more mature audiences and luxury. I think that the fact that we have so much more access to information today with different platforms, forums, much more open to sharing information like this, like this webcast that you're conducting today, has made the younger generations more aware and more savvy of what the intrinsic value of brands are today. Contrary to, say, 15 years ago, when you were at a trade show, you would have a lot of nerds and watch lovers and people that really knew the nuts and bolts of the watch industry. Today, you have people that can get all this information online. And so today's young clients are very, very aware of these watch brands that they love and aspire to have at one point. So I think that evolution is an important thing to consider when starting off on the journey of entrepreneurship, like Gorilla, and what we're trying to do with our brand. I think that from a brand creation point of view, if I can call it that way, and I fully agree with Raj on this point, that freedom of expression and having a strong point of view and being able to to be agile and move quickly in a more and more uncertain environment, particularly when you're a small brand like Gorilla, is very important. And obviously, being able to empower your management to take decisions quickly, all of these things are important for growth and for navigating through difficult times. So in that sense, I think that perhaps these are things that sometimes in groups are a bit more complex to manage. So I would say that ultimately, in any case, for Gorilla, the notion of artistic expression is very important. It keeps our clients interested in the brand. It keeps the brand fresh and relevant, and it keeps us on our toes. Listening, also being able to listen to what clients are interested in and are looking for in our domain, and being able to cater to those needs and demands.
Okay. Do you think that, with luxury, there's always a sense of mysticism, mystery, a bit of intrigue, of how does this thing work, function? But do you think that now, with so much information out there, that is lost, kind of?
Yes. Instead of lost, the markets are evolving. The relationships between brands and clients are evolving. We're getting there. I have direct connections with clients who have specific needs or concepts that they'd like to see happen. And so more so than being lost, it's a very transparent world. And social media and people have opinions, and they like to voice their opinions online. And once you enter the social media platforms, you have to be able to take the good with the bad, and be able to roll with the punches, adapt, and but at the same time, like Raj said, be able to also maintain your brand values. That's something that's very important to Gorilla. We have a destination in mind. We're following a plan, and so being able to balance the proximity that we have with our clients and our idea of what Gorilla means is a very delicate and important balance to maintain. But there is a demystification of what brands are. We're evolving into something new.
Now, this secretive kind of, nobody knows what really is going on is actually perceived as a bad thing, right? So, consumers don't trust that way of sharing the information or not sharing. So I think you can. I think one of the best examples I heard once. I had a conversation with somebody here in Singapore who was in a part of a big brand, and they were saying, before luxury brands were like, let's say, you're a consumer and luxury brand is a car. You would get as a consumer, you would get in the back of a car, and and you would let the luxury brand drive you and discover what they wanted to discover and show you what they wanted to show you. And today, it's really about the consumer sitting with you in the front seat and telling you where they want to go and asking you all the questions, and you having to answer because it's the empowerment of the consumer, of the millennials, and even more we're going to see in Gen Z, that they really want to have that honesty from brands. So I think the magic, if we are to say, call it that, has to happen in a different way. I think through, for example, I think, still there's a beautiful component to storytelling, right? So, storytelling about how the creation process happens, or creating magical experiences. That's where the magic can be, and not necessarily in keeping this kind of element of the unknown.
Isn't that really also an opportunity as much as a challenge? All those that accessibility has risen so much. So because I never thought that some brands are as famous as they are before I saw them on social media and how everybody is like raving about them, right? So So I think it's more of an opportunity actually than a challenge, yeah, because you are much more be much more in touch with your consumer. I think it's a very good thing, because then we'll also actually know what you're getting and what kind of history you're getting, what kind of proposition in the market you are getting when you buy something, and so on. So I think it's actually a very good thing. Yeah, it actually, I think all those transparency has kept a few brands from their inevitable demise, to be honest, yeah, especially in our sector.
Okay. So, so it leads into one of the questions that has come through regarding millennials and Gen Z looking for digital and personalized experiences. How are luxury brands working to meet this demand? Question from Naina. What are the brands doing? I mean, there's a significant change taking place. The baby boomers are going to be phased out soon. Their time on the planet is running out. The next wave is coming across, right? So how are brands going to continue retaining their luxury category for this group of people?
I think what we agree, Kanan, in the panel, it seems that we understand how important the customer is. The customer is empowered today. So whether it's a fashion house or it's a brand, I think they recognize that the customer is looking for things that they believe in, they can acquire at their will, their time, and their choice, rather than being told and rather being pushed into buying and being cornered into something. So the empowerment of a customer is what really brings it back to what the customer is exposed to. The customer today, as I said earlier, is exposed to an enormous amount of information, and they have been empowered. And they are able to look at things globally, not locally and not regionally, but globally, to see what are the brands that they are really working, which are the brands that they can relate to, which are really, really trending, so to speak, which are cool. And that fact, I think more and more fashion houses are beginning to recognize that the top-down approach, which really drove the culture of brands in the past, where you have this creative team and you had the management and sitting in these ateliers and creating concepts, and by the time it gets to the consumer, there's a lag of 6 months or sometimes 9 months. I think they're beginning to understand that, no, we can't do that, because a customer is not going to wait. When they see something, they want something, they want it then and they want it now. So let's try to accelerate the process and let's see what this consumer is really looking for. That's why I just gave an example of a brand earlier, Gucci. And when we look at their heritage and we look at the history and the culture of that brand, to what they are doing today is very different. What they are doing today really appeals to the consumer, and the consumer is driving it because that's what they want. That's the kind of look and feel and application and the perception that they have about the brand. So everyone else who is not into that sort of a mindset, I think they're lagging behind, because they're holding on to a heritage which the consumer of today is not able to connect with. So we need to understand that the empowerment of the customer really needs to drive the success and the future of a brand. And the brands that are doing it, they're doing it well.
So it's about instant gratification, I mean, which seems
it is
to be
in many
the
ways, yes.
order of the day today.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Kanan.
Do you think
there's
that's,
always there's always, I think, a risk of going too far away from who you are as a brand. And I think something we are sometimes discussing, with either, brands or, for example, my students is, how far is too far that you have trouble recovering, so where your DNA is not as recognizable. I think young people still do appreciate the heritage and as long as that heritage and those roots are really modernized and communicated in a narrative that is relevant to them. I think it's not about going away necessarily from the heritage altogether, but maybe staying culturally relevant. So it is true, I think, that, you know, that, for example, Gucci has been very culturally relevant, and a lot of brands have followed. So, you know, so something we're also saying is, you know, branding versus blanding. You know, it's like it's coming, it's all starting to look alike. A little bit with everyone doing everything like fonts and so on, and digital being kind of needing you to be, I mean, to look alike. But I for me, you know, especially somebody who's in the brand, in a branding professor, really, I think, you know, there's also always a risk of just going a little too far, where you lose, you know, what you really are about. So I think sometimes that can be, some brands can still be very culturally relevant and super modernize their brand. Like, for example, you know, Rimowa is a great example. You know, it's a brand that was very, very classical, and then actually coupled with an acquisition or by LVMH, they were able to still stay true to their roots and to their extremely high quality craftsmanship and so on, but really modernize through, you know, collaborations with different brands and having this much more younger outlook on in terms of what they're doing, but still not too far to, you know, to you clearly see who they are. So that's always a risk.
Brands have a DNA, a very unique DNA. So whatever evolution they go through, they still retain that fundamental logic of what they are known for. And there are certain things, certain brands that I know of, in the process of expansion and extension, they have gone into ways which are just not part of their culture. And you can see that they're suffering in those categories. They're not doing well, and it's their main product that supports the success and the future of what is not working for them.
Yeah.
There is one particular brand which I think, I mean, you have mentioned Rimowa, thank you very much. There is a brand that I feel probably excels in all aspects of the discussion we're having today, where they have retained the culture, they have retained the DNA, yet they have evolved, and they appeal in a very sensible way across the demographics. Both a mom and the daughter would love to have that item, and that's Chanel. And when I look at that brand and I see the way they have evolved in categories, I mean, when you think of fragrance, they make the best fragrance, at least they're perceived to make the best fragrance. Chanel No. 5 is well known. And then you have got your handbags, your shoes, your beauty, your accessories. And, you know, people really, really aspire to have that particular experience of owning that brand because of the way they have retained and they have kept that heritage. And you're absolutely right. In the process of appealing to the new generation, they have not had a complete move from what they really are about. They have retained that logic, but yet they have modernized themselves. And I think this is what we are really looking at with the brands today, that which brands are able to keep it, yet adjust because the demographic of tomorrow is different. And they look for different things. Yet they are investing and they are really looking at the history of the culture and the culture of the brands too at the same time.
Okay, I have a question here, or a comment really, which I think we should kind of address. It's from Bertel. He's asking, are we confusing luxury with exclusivity? He says, let us not kid ourselves here. So-called luxury goods are mass-produced and require mass consumption. Masses are never original, led by information and information leaders, and choose what is accepted. The luxury label fully relies on the ownership of information channels and deep pockets. Just look at the color black, the power of that. So is that, I mean, when you talk about exclusivity and luxury in the past, it was a hand craftsmanship, it was a uniqueness of pieces. And Bertel's quite right. A lot of it is about mass production. You're reaching larger groups of people in broader swath of countries. You can't afford to do that without.
What does exclusivity even mean? Yeah, exclusivity means it excludes a lot of people because they cannot afford it.
Yeah.
So mass-produced luxury can still be luxury because people can perceive that they're a part of it, right?
Yeah.
So I don't like the word exclusivity at all, because it means it excludes a lot of people from actually being part of an experience. Yeah. So we don't use this word in our company at all.
We want to be inclusive, right?
Yeah, well, we want to
Which
be
is more of the day.
We want to be exquisite, not exclusive.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, exquisite.
I would argue that in fact a brand has a certain amount of expectations on the quality that they want to deliver, and if you can deliver that quality at a certain volume and guarantee that there's the promise that you're making to your client is fulfilled, then that volume is not a problem. So I think that exclusivity is a byproduct of the amount of product that you can make at a certain level of quality.
Yeah.
So for some brands, it's 60,000 pieces because that's the maximum that brand can deliver at that certain level of quality. For us, for the moment, it's a bit less than that, but we believe in growth. We believe that if we are able to deliver a qualitative product, that the exclusivity will come from the fact that we can only deliver so much. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to be exclusive. It's a good thing. It means that you are generating the maximum amount of product that you can at the highest level of standards that you have.
I think there's another brand that comes to mind, which I mentioned earlier as well, in terms of holding on to heritage and still being relevant to the future. It's Rolls Royce, right? I mean, they've had their best quarter ever in first quarter of this year in their entire history, and that despite the pandemic and everything else. They've got new models coming out, and they've got that sense of tradition and history, and they are still, used in general language as the epitome of luxury. So now, as we head in towards autonomous driving and things of that nature, where cars are not so much for the luxurious aspect, but for the functional, would a brand like Rolls Royce be still considered luxury? Would it still be relevant to you think?
Rolls Royce is a heritage brand founded in part in the aviation industry first, with a deep knowledge of engineering and manufacturing, and so this notion of autonomous driving, for a car lover like myself, it's not something that I'm really necessarily attracted to. But at the same time, Rolls Royce is also known for this idea of silent luxury, the quietness of driving in a very powerful W12 car with over 500 horsepower, without a sound in the cabin. So I can understand for Rolls Royce that approaching electrification is an interesting thing, because there's nothing more quiet than batteries. But at the same time, you're losing a charm. So it's a difficult question. But I see the and also there's obviously an interest. I think that a lot of times, and I might be changing a bit subject, we have this fixation on generations. They're exposed to the same things that we are. They interact with art, they interact with culture, and I think ultimately we have the same sort of fundamental relationships with objects. And so I think that brands that can deliver, again, I may be repeating myself, deliver on the promise of something that's well made, can connect across generations, and that the more the brands are exposed, the more information we're bombarded with, the more relevant brand values and positioning yourself in the world with concrete ideas and a concrete vision is attractive to all generations.
Okay, we've hit the time for this session. Like I said, it's very fast. 45 minutes just whizzes by. But just one last comment from each of you. Do you think there will be a lot of the brands that are considered luxury brands today still evident down the line, or will you see new brands coming in? And what hope for Asian brands to rise into that category? Raj, would you like to start?
There is nothing called an Asian brand and a non-Asian brand. A brand is a brand is a brand. I think the important part really is that there are brands today across categories, that did not exist yesterday. And they are powerhouses, and we know a lot of them. Tesla, we didn't even hear about 10 years ago. So I think the important part about the brand sustainability really is they need to look at what's important to the consumer. If the consumer is environmentally driven, sustainability driven, they need to make sure that these factors are built into the culture of the brand, and they will survive. They will absolutely sustain. But if they hold on to things which made them successful yesterday, they may not exist tomorrow. So I think that evolution has to take into consideration the future generation expectations and the reality of where we stand today as people, and how we are going to become part of that future and make sure that the world we pass on to the next generation is better than the one that we inherited.
I think one thing that is different for me is you have to stay iconic no matter what you do. You have to have iconic products, especially in the furniture. And then, of course, there is the make, there is the quality, and so on. But then, for my segment, the most successful products still are iconic products like Fritz Hansen's chair, the LC4 chairs from Cassina, all those things, right? Or some Eames products from Vitra. So those are timeless, iconic products, and those products will always be successful. The other dimension to it is the narrative that the brand is, producing about themselves, and that will be a key to whether or not they're going to be relevant in 5, 10, 15, or 20 years. Yeah. So you constantly have to reinvent themselves. Yeah. They will constantly have to reinvent themselves. They will have to address issues like sustainability, all these kind of things. Yeah. But then once they address this and they stay with their iconic products and manage to produce new iconic products, then I don't see why not.
It really comes down to how much the brand is adapting and understanding where the consumers are, what the trends are, and how relevant the brand is in the current narrative, and being able to adapt and engage with the consumers of today. So how that evolves, we'll probably see these trends evolve to become not trends, but reality. I think in terms of the rise of the new brands, we had a really interesting period pre-pandemic where there was this entire, sector of brands that were brands with really beautiful narrative, high level of design, but more. We define them more as, I think, contemporary luxury brands. Those were there was a huge growth of these brands. In general, a lot of consumers actually switching to those types of brands, not maybe for all key categories, but, for example, for sure, for fashion and lifestyle products. And then what we saw also during the pandemic is, unfortunately, a lot of those brands, because they were small and not supported, by big groups and so on, didn't make it and really suffered because the sales stopped, right? So I would really like to see more of those brands come back. I think those were the brands that are really innovative, like what Octavio was saying, that are agile, that are able to speak face to face with the customer, that understand the customer, and they are the ones who are giving the push to the big brands to be more competitive, to be more reactive. And in terms of the creativity that's coming from this side of them, this continent, I think that. So I work with a lot of local designers in Singapore, and I think there's a lot of support, for example, from the government to try to give environment where new brands can emerge. So I think that we will be able to see growth here as well, and new talents coming from really the entire world. So. yeah, so I'm looking forward to what's next.
Well, Gorilla was born 5 years ago online on a digital platform by necessity, because we didn't have connections with retailers. We were not known. But in the back of our minds, we always believed that retail would be one day a very important part of our growth. So it was part of our strategy from the very start. We never wanted to be a pure player, a digital pure player. And today we have built strong relationships with partners around the world. I believe that the convergence of digital and retail, physical POS, it will be a very important part of the future to continue to offer clients immersive experiences. So I really believe that that is a future challenge for brands to continue to grow and prosper. The emergence, I see already an emergence in my sector of watch brands from Singapore, from Hong Kong, that are strong, that are creative. And so I do believe that more and more players will emerge in the future, because again, we have so much access to information that it's become a global game now.
Thank you. Thanks, Octavio, for that. Well, it looks like the whole idea of luxury, it has different definitions for different people, and it's what your experience is with these brands, right? So that's a unique part of it, I guess, that you can think of it as you wish, and that's probably something that plays to the strength of that tag, luxury or heritage. So in future, I think possibly we will see more brands coming up, which will have the luxury appeal to some, may not be for others, but it will possibly open up things for more brands to come up as a result of all of this change in demands and desires, and important for existing brands to also condition themselves so that they are relevant to the market. So the environment will determine who's up there and who isn't. Ultimately, I guess it's all down to the customer being king.